Hello. Hi guys. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. In today's video, I'm going to be reading to you guys a couple of Reddit short scary stories, as well as some stories that you guys have sent in. And I did just want to go ahead and say that it is kind of windy and it is getting a little bit more as the time passes. So if you guys hear wind, I am sorry. I tried to wait until it went down a little bit, but I feel like it's just been getting worse. So I figured that it would just add to the eeriness. So all of the stories will be linked in the description just in case you guys want to check them out on your own. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give it a thumbs up if you enjoy this video, and also leave a comment if you have any explanation for any of these stories. I'm really excited about the stories for today, so let's go ahead and get started. The first story is called I Need Help. Strange things are happening in my house. Short, long story. Strange things are happening in my house more frequently than usual. This morning, my mom went out, and when she came back, her bed was hella wet. She thought that I did it. I did not. All of her clothes and shoes, too. There wasn't any signs from where the water could have came in from, and the ceiling wasn't wet either. This has been happening for a while now. The events have been really problematic for me and my family. Some of the things that have been happening are the current. My cat is getting scared and hissing at nothing. My mother, brother, and grandmother is seeing something taking my form. It alternates between a full representation of myself or a shadow type thing. Super creepy. A small thing running and hiding behind the furniture. When I go to check, there's nothing, and it isn't a rat or a mouse or mice. A small dog and a big black dog appearing when someone is left alone in the house. There's a strange growling at night. Also, I'm having sleep paralysis. The last time I suffered from this, I could hear a lot of voices, and I can feel like something was trying to break something inside of me. And there has also been a lot of strange shadows. Sometimes we can feel a really heavy atmosphere in the living room. I really need help, and at this point, I don't really know what to do. Okay, that is the end of the first story. Now, I'm just gonna start off by saying, they definitely need, a priest to go into that house and do some cleansing, because that is so creepy, and I would not feel comfortable staying in that house, especially if something is taking form of yourself. How freaking creepy is that? Definitely a situation that I would not want to be in. Okay, let's move on to the next story. Also, guys, if I ever seem really happy or smiley when doing these short scary stories, I don't mean to be making fun of the story, but 99% of the time when I film these videos, I am home alone. So I need to be smiley and kind of see the bright side of it, because if not, I will creep myself out so much. And not to mention it's windy, and I always film during nighttime, so that's why. But trust me, these are all so scary. Okay, the shoulder. This has gone on since we moved in. I'm home most of the time by myself. My wife and daughter are gone during the school hours while I work from home. I have 2 dogs that mostly sleep all day in their dog bed behind me. This means I should not hear anything occurring outside the immediate room that I'm in. Recently, my daughter has said that she no longer feels safe alone in her room at night. Also in the basement. She's 9 years old. We explain her that there's nothing to be afraid of and that she has both of the dogs to keep her company at night. She replies that the dogs no longer feel safe either. That's a hard one to understand. So in the last 2 weeks or so, we've moved her furniture upstairs. My office remains down there, however. Since moving her room to the main floor, she claims to feel at ease and that she can sleep at night. One big thing, however, is that now I feel somewhat terrified at work downstairs during the day. That's hard to explain. I feel like all day I am being watched. I feel brushes of cold air when the fan and air conditioning are off, and one of the dogs, Luna, came down the hall the other day and froze halfway. She got really low to the ground and basically crawled into the office. She had this terrified look about her. She looked like someone was yelling at her or about to hit her. For the record, we do not hit our dogs. But she had just had that look that she was getting spanked. When she got to me, she was shaking. So I called for Daisy, the other dog, to come in the room. She came down the hall and started to growl as soon as she passed the part where Luna had been. She went quickly around the corner, turned around, her back to me, and she just stared down the hall. She was as stiff as a board, and despite me calling her over and over, she didn't move. I managed to capture a full minute of her stance. It really creeped me out. Clearly, both dogs saw something that I could not see. This has played into some of my fears and makes me wonder if my daughter not feeling safe anymore is related. More so, in the last few weeks, I found lights on that should be off and others that are never on. And again, I'm the only one home, so something is happening or my mind is playing tricks on me. There have also been a few neighbors that have complained of issues lately. Things being moved, TVs turning on when no one is home, pets getting locked in rooms, and dogs and cats fixating on things that shouldn't be there. How can I find out spiritual history of our land? Okay, that is the end of that story. Now that one is definitely creepy, but it's also so sad that they are kind of living in fear in their own home. I feel like that's the absolute worst, especially because obviously when you're home you want to feel as safe as possible, and the fact that the whole bottom floor is like giving them these strange occurrences or fears, it really sucks. So hopefully they can figure out what the heck is going on, because that is definitely super creepy. This next story is not so much scary, but I feel like it's a very interesting story. So let's go ahead and get into it. It's called I've Seen an Angel Hovering Over My Sister as She Slept. I was 6 or 7 and shared a room with my older sister. I woke up randomly during the night and rolled over onto my other side. My sister was laying on her back in her bed fast asleep, and directly above her was a man excited to tell my sister when she woke up, but she didn't believe me. No one did. So, I made a promise to myself that I would never forget what I have seen. It was real. Has anyone experienced anything similar? What are your thoughts? Was it an angel? Thanks for reading. This is 100% a true story. Like I mentioned, it's not so much scary, but it kind of is. Like, you wake up and you see this thing floating over, a sibling. I find that pretty creepy, but I also find it kind of nice, and I would like to believe that angels are real just as much as I believe in the paranormal. So let me know your thoughts. The next story is called I Had My First Paranormal Experience Last Night. I'll start by saying that I am not a person who tends to believe in the paranormal, at least up until now. So I've searched my brain for every single explanation and came up with nothing. I have lived in the same apartment building for 3 years now. I live alone and I've never experienced anything out of the ordinary. Last night, like every other night, my cats woke me up for food at about 4 a.m. I went to feed them, now wide awake, and after about 20 minutes tossing and turning, I gave up hope of falling asleep. I rolled out to get out of bed and saw the unmistakable image of a face leaning out of my closet and staring at me. I immediately thought it was a shadow from outside or a trick of the light. I even would have written it off as a dream if I hadn't been awake for some time by that point. It was a round, very white face with a circular black eyes, and after I'd look at it for a few seconds, it slowly went back into the closet. As someone who is always looking for a rational explanation, I immediately turned on all of the lights and rushed into the closet to investigate. There was nothing there. Admittedly, I was spooked at this point and opted to get back into bed and try to sleep. I was too paranoid to fall back asleep though, when I kept opening my eyes and looking towards the closet, hoping to see it again so that I could find an explanation. About half an hour later, I opened my eyes and it was there again. This time though, it was closer. The same very white face with big black eyes just looking at me. I stared at it for about 30 seconds, blinking repeatedly, trying to make sure I was fully awake, before very slowly reaching to turn the light on. As soon as the room lit up, the figure had disappeared. Throughout the rest of the night, I didn't see it again, but at one point, when I turned my back on the spot I had seen it, I felt the bed shake as though someone had crawled up next to me. The only other notable occurrence, shortly after 6 a.m., a bunch of clothes I had securely hanging in the closet fell to the floor. There wasn't a draft, and it wasn't my cat's. I had the door closed at this point. Long story short, I did not sleep after that. It was so vivid, I can't write it off as a shadow. I have no history of sleep paralysis or hallucinations, and I know that I was wide awake. Okay guys, that is the end of that story. Now, when I found that story, I was honestly so shook because I've always, since I was little, had the biggest fear of We always had extra rooms not being used, and because of the age of the house, plus all this extra space, there was always an eeriness, like someone looming in the shadows. If I ever had to get a drink in the middle of the night, I looked at the ground the whole time because I was scared of what may be looking back at me in the dark corners, rooms, and hallways. Even the windows and mirrors were avoided because I wasn't sure what I'd see looking back at me. When I was around 12 years old, I questioned why the room that used to be my nursery was locked from the outside. I didn't think it was weird before then. My dad needed a room for storage, and I figured he just wanted to keep me out. I brought it up to him one day, asking what's so important in there that he needs me to keep out even though I'm not a child anymore. Typical 12-year-old mentality. Turns out, I was not entirely correct about the lock. My dad, with a very serious demeanor, sat me down and answered my question. When I was a baby, around 1 or 2 years old, I slept in this nursery room on the second floor, next to my dad's room. This room was painted by my sister especially for me, with Winnie the Pooh characters and fluffy clouds. The type of thing I think back on and appreciate. The effort and creativity was so admirable. I have a photo of me smiling at the Pooh Bear on the wall while we were setting it up. But I'm not the most tech savvy to figure out how to link the photo. Anyway, I was in this nursery in my crib again, right next to my dad's room, the perfect age to be on my own. Every night though, my dad was woken up by me scream crying. He had raised 4 children before me, so he was not making first-time parent mistakes that would otherwise be in question. He thought it was probably the switch of being in my own room rather than being in his room that caused my nightly discomfort. He considered bringing the crib back into his room, but of course, the nursery was all set. For a while, when I cried in terror, he would come in and check on me, only to find that nothing was wrong in the sense of stressors like temperature, diaper change, hungry or thirsty, etc. He would stay with me until I fell asleep or keep the light on to make me feel safer, and then return to his room to get some actual rest. One night, after finally having enough of my distress, he decided to camp out on the floor of the nursery to see if he can figure out what was the matter. This was the last time anyone slept in there. I was able to doze off now that I wasn't alone. He, on the other hand, was tossing and turning on the hardwood floor, not comfortable enough to sleep. As he laid on the floor, mulling over the situation, boom, 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 he was jolted to his feet by a few massive blows to the floorboards beneath him, centered directly on his back, as if someone on the first floor had a battering ram aimed at the ceiling. His first instinct was to rush downstairs and check for intruders. He was a man of logic. However, when he got down there, the lights were off. There was no one downstairs. Front door was locked, the windows were locked, no sign of forced entry. And no one else lived with us. Our closest neighbor was down the road a quarter mile, and why would they break in just to bang on the ceiling? Let alone have it mapped out where my dad would be sleeping in my nursery. And the force of the blows, this wasn't normal. After this event, my dad brought my crib back into his bedroom description. You can leave it in the comments or DM me if you would like as well. They did go ahead and leave their story commented on one of my other Reddit short scary stories videos, so thank you so much for sharing and allowing me to share it with all of you. So the story doesn't have a title, but it starts off, I have a story. My great-grandma died a few years ago, and my great-grandpa, her husband, hadn't passed yet. They had different rooms, I think, in their apartment, but one night my great-grandpa woke up to her voice coming from her room. And he responded, and he told us they had a good conversation for a few minutes before he went back to bed. I don't know if it's because he was old or because he was still coping with his loss, but gives me chills, especially because I don't really believe in ghosts. Okay, that is the end of that story. Now, I did read it before sharing it with you guys. I definitely believe that something like that could happen, especially because in my family, on both my mom and my dad's side, all of my family have had some sort of paranormal encounter. So, and also have like communicated with family members that have passed, that be through dreams, mainly through dreams. But I definitely feel like that's possible, and I also find it kind of sweet that like your great-grandmother kind of came to have a conversation with her husband and, you know, kind of let him know that she's okay. So yeah, that's the first story, and I'm super excited to share this one with you guys. It doesn't have a title either, but it reads, "Hey, I've recently been binge watching your scary stories, and I wanted to share a personal experience with you. Thank you so much. It means the world to me for all of your support and also for sharing this story." And I did read a little bit of it, and I had to stop myself because I was like so shook, but also I wanted to finish reading it with you guys. So it goes, it didn't happen to me, but it was my grandfather, and he was telling us some paranormal stories that have happened to him. But the one that stuck out to me the most was just the craziest thing ever. So he said that when he was younger, he used to go out a lot with his friends. One night, they were all hanging out at someone's house drinking and just hanging out, when all of a sudden a little kid gets there and tells him, "Hey, Ma," which is what we call our grandma, like a sweet thing of calling your grandma instead of calling her grandma, you know, just like another little nickname, sweet nickname. So the kid gets there and tells him, "Hey, Ma is looking for you. She wants you to come home." And he said that for some reason it was like he knew the kid, and he said, "Okay, tell her I'm coming." And the kid left but came back shortly after and said that he wouldn't leave without my grandfather. Well, not thinking twice, my grandfather said goodbye to all of his friends and followed the kid, taking him by the hand. They were walking